Welcome to Sparking Success with Aaron Opalewski. Aaron brings you conversations that spark innovation, cultivate leadership skills, and pave the way for your business success. In each episode, we delve into the dynamic world of business and leadership, exploring strategies, insights, and success stories that fuel your professional journey. Hey everybody, welcome back to Sparking Success. My name is EJ Swanson, and today we have a special episode for you, a recording of a live talk that Aaron did down in St. Petersburg, Florida. He was a guest and a speaker at Mark Whitby's Live Recruiter Summit, and this is a talk that is packed full of amazing insights about how to build a recruiting agency, a staffing agency, and even beyond that, a business that outlasts you. We can't wait for you to see it. We'd love for you to take a moment, drop a comment, let us know if you were at the summit and or if you enjoyed this episode. Have a great day.
I'm very excited to introduce our keynote speaker today. His name is Aaron Opalewski, and Aaron is an entrepreneur, an investor. He's either the founder or co-founder of 6 or 7 different recruiting businesses within the Spark Companies group. They are targeting 30 million in revenue this year and about half of that in gross profit, which is pretty phenomenal for an independent recruiting and staffing company. And so Aaron and I met because he was a guest on the Resilient Recruiter podcast. That was pretty much exactly a year ago. And we just hit it off. You know, some people you just click with. And I think it's because Aaron he's got an abundance mindset. He's really keen to help others in the industry. And then he invited me to be on his podcast a few months ago. And I said, hey, listen, we're hosting this event. Could you be our keynote speaker? And he was absolutely up for it. So please give a huge warm welcome to Aaron Opalewski.
Thank you, sir. All right, so
Clicker's here when you need it.
okay. All righty. We are on. There we go. Let's give Mark a round of applause for putting this together. You know, this is my first time meeting Mark in person, and it's been an awesome experience, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the event to get to know him better. Interacting with the team has been amazing as we're working up to this. So Rachel, Sanjay, who I just met, and Dan, who's helping us out over on sound, thank you to all you guys as well. Let's give them a round of applause. You know, I come to these events, we put on some stuff ourselves, and you know, it's the people behind the scenes that make it happen and need to be acknowledged. So Mark, thank you for asking me to come and do this. And as Mark said earlier, I'm not a professional speaker. I run businesses. That's my main thing. I do some speaking, and I'm used to getting up in front of rooms and talking. But what I love doing is building businesses. And that's what we're going to talk, about today. But I'm just grateful for the opportunity and that you asked me to be here today. And it's my hope that I can give everyone at least one golden nugget, like Mark said. I will tell everyone, and this has just been my experience from these events, and Mark said it well, try and approach today with an open mind and the next 2 days with an open mind. Anything you hear and it's like, oh, that doesn't apply to my business, or it's a different niche or different skill set or whatever it is, like, yeah, that may be true, but success leaves clues on stuff. And so I know I was able to rearrange my schedule, and I'm going to be attending, some of the talks, and I'm looking forward to that. And I know that I'm leaving here going to learn something. So I wasn't planning on saying this, but one thing that I just like to, I don't travel a ton, for work anymore. Last year, I didn't really travel at all. I was focused on building our portfolio of companies and working with our operators to do that. But I had a friend at the last speaking event that I went to and was a part of where I spoke. And he said that anytime that I leave my family, I should be doing that to come back a better version of myself. And that resonated with me. So I hope that resonates with you. And that just kind of sets the tone for the rest of the event, that we all come away a better person, better professional, and forge some good collaboration with each other. So, okay, let's get into it. Where is my clicker? There we go. Building a business that outlasts you. So we're going to go through a decent amount of things today. What Mark talked about, the focal point for this is growth. And I just don't think anyone's here today with the mindset that they just want to run a lifestyle business. If that was the case, because I think everyone in the room has had some success, you are successful, you're doing great things, but you want to grow, you want to get better, you want to improve, you want to be able to pour into your teams, you want to be able to see some of the same success for people, within your company that you've experienced yourself. And that's what I love about this industry. It's completely changed my life. And I've been doing it for 17 years now. And I'm just forever grateful for what I've learned and what I get to do. And my favorite thing to do now is to pour into others and help them with that as well, whether that be internally, at our companies or doing something like this. I love this industry. And I think that you probably all love the industry too. Otherwise, why would you be here today making this investment? You care about your business, you care about the people in your organizations, and you want to build something great. Part of that is building something that's bigger than yourself. And that's what we're going to try and talk about today. Before I get into my story to kick us off, I got to set kind of the foundation here. And the foundation is that you guys have all probably heard talks, seen posts, listened to podcasts about core values, culture, all that kind of stuff. This is not going to be that talk today. But I did want to point that out because there's a reason you hear it all the time. It's because it's foundationally important. It's very important. But you've heard all that before. You've read the books. You've integrated that into your companies, hopefully. And if you haven't, I would suggest that you do so. I want this to be an advanced talk. But the pretext for that is that without that foundation, none of this stuff that we talk about is going to matter. So we're not going to talk about it today, but it's foundational. And I know a couple of the guys in the room, and I see them building this within their companies. And I think that's awesome. I don't know all of you, but I look forward to getting to know you more. And I'm sure I'll see the same thing, that people are serious about building their culture, their core values, and something that is good for other people as well. So with that as the focal point for the foundation, let's get into this. So I hope it's okay that I share some numbers with you today, because I wanted to do something different that I haven't talked about on a podcast before specifically, that I haven't shared a ton on, specifically in general. And I hope this comes off okay. We're in a room where, we're running businesses. We should know our numbers, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But I would think most of us are money motivated. I would think that we're also wanting to create a positive impact, for others, and both can be true. And I think that you need both to be true to really excel in this business. That's my opinion. There's other ways to run it. That's just how I like to look at it. So I'm going to share a story with you, and it's not to try and pound my chest or anything like that. It is to really try and impress upon some points. And I'm hoping that it nails down some of the things that we're talking about. And it starts out with the story I want to tell you is our biggest roadblock to growth. And that biggest roadblock was actually, me making $1 million a year. That was a huge roadblock for our continued growth. And so when I got into the industry, as much of us probably did, we were interested in the opportunity. We probably did not go to college for recruiting. Probably most of us fell into it. And my first, initial vision and what I saw was I can make six figures in this business, and I want to do that. And something I love about the business, I absolutely love that you can take someone from any walk of life, and if they can communicate well with people and they'll work hard, you can give them the blueprint on how to do this. And I get a little emotional talking about it because I just love it. So that's awesome. And it took me 3 years, but I was able to do that in my third year of recruiting. And at that point, I was in my first business. It was an industrial staffing business. And we did mostly industrial contract staffing. We did do some direct hire, but it was mostly contract staffing. And we went past, the 100,000 mark, well past it. And in the next 2-3 years, we kind of like exceeded that by quite a bit. This is not a partnership speech today, but a quick note on that. When you have a partnership, it's important to have operating agreements to talk about who's got what duties, really like be a good communicator of all that stuff. And in my first business, the reason why we didn't stay partners, because we did none of that. At the same time, the reason why we had some good success in the early years is because we just went out and got things done. We called the clients, we took the racks, we qualified the orders, we got in front of the customers, and we went to work. And it worked so well that as the company grew and we didn't do the other stuff, it wasn't built on a good foundation. So we had the skill and the ability to do that, but not a good communication and partnership. So if any of you are considering a partnership, or like when we consider our partnership, when we consider that within our portfolio, there's a lot of getting to know the people, and do we fit together? How are we aligned? Who's got what strengths? Like, how does this make sense? But like, that's all got to be figured out. Then you got to put it on paper. I like to put it on paper in operating agreements, buy sells, all that kind of stuff. Razor tight, so everyone knows what the deal is if something goes off. And then I like to put it to the side and never look at it again and let the operator run the company. But you still got to do that stuff. So fast forwarding, that didn't work out. I move on. I start Spark Talent, which is the first of our 7 portfolio companies. It's been around for 11 and a half years. And we basically knew how to run it up to the level that we were at, and we knew how we wanted to take it to the next gear, and where my partner and I in the other business just saw things different ways. And 2 things can be true. Like, there's different ways to run businesses, and that's okay. But you can't be 50-50 partners and one person wants to go this direction and the other person wants to go the complete opposite direction. So we started Spark. We took it in the direction that we wanted to take it. And my mindset around growing the business was helpful, and there's some good things about it. And that was, I want to have this business net $1 million in net income. And anything above that, I'm ready to go grow the company. Let's grow this thing. That's more money than I've ever made. I can, do very well that way. And I'm passionate about growing this company and going after our big mission. And so we did that. And over a 2-year period, so in 2015, that worked. This is where the problem started, though. So we're 2 years into Spark Talent, and that worked. And we were pouring the additional money into growing the business. And we grew it again in 16. We grew it again in 17. And then in 2018, we doubled that number up. We more than doubled, the net income. Sales were growing. I think we were at about $27,000 in revenue. More importantly, we're at about 6.2 in gross profit. And unfortunately, at the time that was happening, I didn't even know what the gross profit was. All I knew was the top line and the bottom line. And so there were some good things within that, but here's what was happening. I'm thinking this is going to resonate with some people. As your business grows and you add people to the team, people start coming to you and asking you for more things, more people, more tools, more of your time. And as we're in a people business. We're probably people pleasers. We probably want to see the good, in situations. We see the opportunities. That's why we're in the room. That's why we do what we do. And there's so much good to that. But my problem was at this point is I hadn't reset my mindset. I hadn't reset my vision. I hadn't got myself in rooms like this, in rooms with people that were farther along with me that could stretch my vision and my capacity for what was possible. And the problem came in 2019. We were diversifying, but heavy in the auto market. And a lot of the retoolings in the Metro Detroit area were done. What did that mean? Well, there was less work going on in some of these plants. And we could see that, and we were growing in 18. So we decided, I got the bright idea that we were going to get ahead of it and diversify. And we went from having 2 offices, we had opened 2 successful offices, to 9 by the time we got to the midpoint in 2019. And we decided to take a crack at IT staffing, which we weren't really doing. So all of that at once. That's a lot of newness at, one time. And I caution you, I'm always up for trying new things and advancing, but be careful on how many balls you have in the air at once. So we fast forward throughout that year, and we cut our net income in half. We still made money. It was back down to that $1 million marker. And I won't say this perfectly, but one of my mentors, says this well. I'm going to refer to him a couple times in this talk because he's been integral in me shaping my mindset around how to continue to grow the business and move forward. But he talks about our temperature in life, our capacity, and it's like a thermostat, and we might heat it up and we can cool it down, but we're always going to regulate back to what that thermostat says. And so my thermostat was clearly that $1 million. That's what I was telling myself. And there was some good to that because we grew the organization, but I didn't stretch myself and my vision and really put any systems or frameworks or processes in place to take it past that point. So it would make sense that even though we went up, 100%, over 100% over that, we cooled right back down to where that thermostat was at. And so when I first heard him say that, it was after that had happened. I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely true. Because I wish I would have heard that a couple of years ago because we had to go through that experience. And I'm grateful that our companies have always made money, and it's not like well, in some areas you don't know what you're doing and you're learning, but I don't want to discredit like what we were able to do at that time or anything like that, but we didn't know how to take it forward. And you can't really get to that next gear if you don't get a system and framework for how you move forward. So that's my story. The rest of this talk is the actual blueprint, not part of it, not 10%. And that's why I just want to use the numbers, because I don't know where you're at. That's not what's important. What's important, like Mark said, is that you learn something and that we grow and you improve yourself, because the only one you should be competing against yourself is the best version of you. And we want to all come out of here better. And so this blueprint that we're going to go through has taken us from that point, that kind of like dip, or I like to call them like loops in the process of growth. It's taken us from that point to where we crossed we must have talked before the end of last year, but we did $33.5 million in revenue last year out of our staffing businesses. We did 14.7 in gross profit. You can quiz me on this later. I was telling some of these guys last night, I'm a big numbers guy, and if your numbers don't make sense, either I'm very quiet or I have a lot of questions. Usually I'm just quiet and don't talk to you. And I said that to those guys because they know their numbers, and I really love what they're doing. They're doing great stuff. I'll shout them out. It's these guys at TLO right here, Simon and Dante. Good guys. You guys they are LinkedIn celebrities. So that Mark was talking about. But so this is the blueprints that's taken us past $5 million in EBITDA this year. And I use this in a couple of my other businesses too. So overall, we in the portfolio of staffing, companies, there's 7. Just did an acquisition at the beginning of this year in one of my other entities. And, our overall, like all our businesses do about 42 million in revenue, 21 million in gross profit. And that's how we like to focus on what we're doing, is like raise the gross profit, the revenue will come. The revenue is nice. There's some good things about it, but what really matters is the dollars that you have to work with. So let's get into it. Okay. I told you earlier in 2018, when we had at the time our best year ever, I now know our gross profit number, but at the time, if you asked me, and it was like a conversation like this, I would have been like this. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. And I kind of knew, but I didn't know for sure. and I damn sure wasn't using it. And we're going to talk about how to use it. So before we do that, let's just define it. So you have your sales minus your cost of goods sold is going to equal your gross profit. For a lot of us in the staffing business, that's going to be our payroll expenses and taxes, workers' compensation, and then some people throw onboarding expenses into that. We like to do that because those are dollars that are happening to make the placement happen. And so we like to put those things in. So if you guys can give me a nod or a yes, are we clear on that before we move forward? Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So now if we understand that we're looking at the gross profit and that's what's most important to us, what do we do with it? Before we get into that, this is my opinion. There's going to be other opinions out there, but I'm sharing with you my opinion and my experiences. So here's where I think the roadblocks, let's define the roadblocks in your gross profit. I think that 1 million is a key marker. Getting to 3 million in gross profit is a key marker. Getting to 10 million is a key marker. Then it goes to 30, and then it goes to 100. Now, I'll go through this in a minute, but I can give you from experience on what those restriction points for us were at 1 million, 3 million, and 10 million. We're currently working on the 30 million in gross profit. And so I'll tell you our strategy in a second, but strategies need to continue to evolve. And then you'll see in the 100 million part of that, I'll tell you my idea on how I believe we're going to do that as well. Although I know for a fact that as we keep marching down that path, it's going to evolve and change. And that's okay. That's part of the process. So let's go back to the top here. So $1 million in gross profit. This is probably a lot of people in the room and different ways. But the main way that I see this is you got one key salesperson, one driver, and then you build some complementary parts around it, usually 4 people in total. And you're able to pull that off. That's probably a lot of us in the room. It starts to change when we go to 3 million. At 3 million, you're probably going to have a team of about 10, and you move into either what I call like an elite person in this industry at selling, and ultimately fulfilling, because that's part of your sales. And what we do, you can show me 1,000 orders, show me how many fills you have, because that's what brings the dollars in. If you're on any kind of other plan where you get paid without fills, well, show me how that looks in 12 months if you haven't been putting in fills. We're in a fulfillment business. So either one elite person can do that with a team, a supporting cast, or probably 2 pretty good salespeople that are driving a bulk of that revenue can also do that. I've seen it both. We've leaned more towards, and the reason that we grew our first business to that point, and that's really where it stopped, one, because that's a friction point and communication has to really get better. But we had 2 people that were pretty good at sales. And then when we moved over and we started Spark, the first person that I ever hired as a recruiter came over and started Spark with me. He's our CRO today at Spark Talent. He has equity in 5 out of our 7 companies. His name's Fletcher. Not that that matters, but in case any of you want to connect with him on LinkedIn, you could try and swipe him, but he makes way too much money. So we built Spark quickly to that point because we had those 2 people there too. So we were able to do that. And our communication was more in line, which is super important because we were able to double in size our first year from where we had got in the other business. And the main thing on that was at the point, he'd only been doing this 4 years. He was probably an equal or lesser skill level in sales, even though it's his unique ability. We really gave him the chance for that to come out. He probably wasn't as good as my old partner was, who had been doing that for 10, 12 years at a high level. But he was good and he was talented in it, and we were aligned. And that became really important because we were able to take that business in the first year from about 10 people on the team, cross that point, Now, we had no clue at that point. We really had to go back and do some digging with our accounting team to figure out what our gross profit was from our first year. We've done it, but we were able to cross that point, and then we doubled down and tried to take things to the next gear where we went from 10 to 20 people. And that was aggressive, and that was good. And at surface level, it was working. We were growing. But we were building up some of the problems because we weren't doing any of the stuff that we're going to talk about as we keep going. I'm going to go through this a little bit more before we get to that, though. So at 10 million, I believe you need to build a team, and this has been our experience. This is how we did it. We built a team of about 30 strong production people, give or take around 30 people, and then you have to start to put an ops team together. Now, we put the ops team together sooner because we've been doing contract staffing since day one. If you're doing, all directs or all like where you're not, employing people, you have less operational load, but still at this point, you're pumping out some major volume. So you think about it from a client experience, from a candidate experience, like you need, I have not seen one built that way without some strong ops people, or at least the genesis of what's becoming a team. So you really need that. You need a team of around 30 people that are good producers, and that you need to develop. They don't just come out good producers. You got to develop them, which I'm sure we'll hear more about, throughout the next 2 days. And then you need a strong operations team. Now, for us, what we're working on now, since we've built one of those, and we're coming in just south on our gross profit in the workforce solutions companies of 15, we're trying to build out 3 teams of 10. Is what we're doing. Now, we're also approaching it from a couple other angles too. And if something grows, fast and rises up, like I don't really care which channel kind of opens up. We're focused on building 3 of them. And out of our biggest company that's been around the longest, that is the one that crossed this marker in and of itself by itself. What we're doing is we have it split into 4 business units. One is smaller and it's not a project. It's more of a revamp of our light industrial business, which is where we started. And then we moved away to higher margin, technical skill trades, professional type placements. So that's the smallest group now. And then we have 3 other groups that are all above or around that $3 million level in gross profit. And we're now trying to take those cohesive teams and building them out. So wherever you stand in this and wherever you go on it, if I can give you some advice or a one-liner, it's try and keep cohesive teams, small cohesive teams. Small cohesive teams can communicate with speed. They can move with speed. All the advantages that you guys have when you're smaller, or it's a couple people that you lose as you get away from hip to hip, interaction with your team. The way that we are trying to do it, I'm not saying it's the only way, but the way we're trying to do it is by having small cohesive teams and then building out from there. So we're not trying to build one team to 30 million. Now, if that happens, that's great. But our business unit that is under 3 million, you got to understand what happens. It broke off into a whole nother business unit. So if we kept it together, it would have been like 6-7 million, right now this year. But it turned into, because we're a sales and fulfillment organization, it turned into a whole nother subset of styles, which we're going to get into in a minute. And so naturally we just broke it off. So that can happen too. But I'd rather have smaller cohesive teams working together towards building it up than try and lump everyone together, especially because we're on a centralized model now. And we have people that are physically present in our office. We have 2, but they're not connected yet. We're working on it. They're right across the hall from each other. We're working on connecting them. We got to kick some other people out nicely to do that. And then we have about half to 40% of our team that works remote or flex. And so there's ways that we have to be intentional about how do you do that hip to hip communication in a different setting. And as much as we can, we have that broken up, within these teams so that you don't have one team operating completely different with, hey, these 2 people over here are operating one way and then it's complete. Like we try and split that up by team. Okay, let's keep moving. So that's the high level on these numbers. what do we do with them? Once you understand this gross profit, we'll break this up into 3 areas. And I believe that probably most of us in this room, because we're good recruiters, we're good in sales, we're probably pretty good naturally, or just how we learned, and we're able to do this at a high level. We're pretty good at our leading indicators. We've always been good at that. We always knew that. We always had good tracks on that. And I have to believe a lot of people in the room do too. You're probably not here in this room having the success you have if you don't at least know how many subs you have, how many interviews you have, and what you have in process, right? So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that because I want to try and focus on the areas that maybe you don't spend as much time in. But can I get a raise of hands if you're following me on the leading indicators? Okay, cool. So we'll keep moving. Lagging indicators. Amount of starts, over a month, over a quarter, over a year. That could be important. Mark talked about headcount, kind of depends on some of the styles. Here's a big one for us on what really, there's no calm in business and you're trying to grow it. It's hectic. It's chaotic. It's really freaking hard. And I'm not, it's just going to be. That's how it is. But learning this stuff and implementing it is really kind of freeing in your business. And it's like, I don't know everything. I don't know what's coming. I don't know what email I'm going to get while I'm listening to Aaron, during this conversation, but I have a general framework. And I care about my people. I care about, creating a good business. I want to, invest in my team. But I have things that I'm looking at. I'm not just making all those decisions off my gut. And so the first thing on this for us was understanding monthly GP, yes, overall, but more on an individual level. Because we all have high performers. If you have a team, you have high performers on your team, and you have what we hope to be as developing performers on your team. I don't like focusing on low performance. I want to be developing people up, on their performance. And I'm not quick to quit on people. Maybe in 5 years, I tell you that was a mistake and I've changed my mindset. I hope, if we were talking again, I would tell you I've changed some of my outlook on some stuff because that's part of what growth is. But my experience has been, if someone has good character and fits our value set and is willing to put in the effort, that's what's most important, that especially the last part, because someone can have good character and they can be a nice person and they can just not be a fit for this industry. It's not for most people. And then they may just not want to put in the effort that it requires. And it requires a ton of effort to do this at a high level. Especially as you're learning, how do you beat experience? I think you do it with effort. You do it with extra reps, and those extra reps help you get better. Well, if someone won't put in that effort, we're really in kind of a bad place, even if they're a great person. And this is not a performance management talk. That would be another one, but there's ways to do that if we don't avoid conflict that is kind. It might not be nice. It might not feel nice. But it's kind. You can treat people with respect. You can focus on the facts. You can focus on that, hey, we may have failed on putting you into a role that doesn't align with your unique strengths and abilities. And, let's not ask you to do something that you either don't want to do or you're not capable of doing. Again, another conversation, but what really helps you in these conversations is knowing someone's monthly gross profit. And there's different models and things that you want to do. I'll just share with you ours. Like, we're trying to get an individual between 29 to 40,000 in gross profit. And I have to stop there because here's another problem in our industry. I got to define this. This isn't on the slides. I was thinking about this last night in a conversation that I was having. When I give you that number, we think of a placement. So I'm looking at Mike. I know Mike. How you doing, Mike? Good. Good to see you. Mike's another LinkedIn celebrity. He's a great guy. I'm looking forward to his talk tomorrow. So if Mike and I work manufacturing engineering placement together, and we make a $30,000 placement, and Mike's out with the client doing his thing. He comes back and he's like, Aaron, here's this rack. Here's what we're going to do. And we work it together and we create a $30,000 invoice. Yes, that's $30,000, but we have to understand the math. The gross profit for each of us is not $30,000. The gross profit for us in that situation is 15 each. So it's very important within your reporting, or at least it has been for us. This has been a game changer. This is big on as we were growing the team and things get kind of fat and out of hand because we're not watching the right stuff, on how we got better at that and became a good steward of what we're building on. Like, how do we actually build this up where this is sustainable and we keep growing? We don't like grow to a certain point, and then if things dip, we're kind of like, we're off where we want to be. And this was a key component because we didn't use to break this up, or people didn't understand. They just had their big number, and the math on that never works. If it's, if I have 30 production people, if I have that, now my math's going to be off. Hold on a second. Okay. If I have 100 production people, big difference there. I would have checked my own math. I had to stop myself. 100 production people to do a 30 million in gross profit number, that would mean that they need to be at 300,000 in gross profit each, right? But if Mike and I make 10 of those placements and we do $300,000, and there's 50 other Mike and Aaron's, so there's 100 of us, we're not going to have 30 million in gross profit. We have $15 million in gross profit. If you're doing your math the other way, you're going to get smoked on this stuff. So as I'm going through this, we call it a raw total. Call it, what you want. Feel free to use it if you want. But we want to understand someone's raw total. And there's a calculation we do on that. We can get super complicated with it if you have sourcers or, different things going on. Like, let's just stick to the full desk. This would be 100% of that. A split model, like we just went through right there, would be 50%. And I have to allocate the gross profit accordingly on that. And then I want to spit that out monthly with my accounting team and know where everyone's at. I want to know that. Again, we're not going to get into performance management on this, but I wanted to spend a good amount of time on that specifically because it's been a game changer when we really grasped that whole concept and then implemented it. And it's also helped us to be kind, cordial, encouraging, but not passive or avoid conflict where we needed to address, performance issues. And that's something I'm proud of, outside of the growth. Like, I'm probably most proud of that on how we are going to have a high performance culture. We have a high performance culture, but that doesn't mean that we have to be assholes to people. It doesn't mean that someone needs to show up surprised that they're getting let go that day, and then it's like disruptive. It doesn't mean we have to embarrass people. There's just so much we can do when we use this data to be a good guide to people, be a good guide to ourselves within the business, a good guide to our teams. And if we see that the reality is that it's not going to work out, we can find a kind, way to do that, but not one that just lets it skate on, for too long. So, okay. So the next one is fill and conversion ratios. And this is great for me too. Sanjay's recording us, and I'm either going to share this talk with our own team, or I'm going to just do it again because it's fresh in my head. So, game changer for us over the last, call it 2 years. It's been about 3-4 years that we've really understood that monthly GP thing and the GP overall. And it's I just can't say enough how important that's been to us moving forward. But the conversion ratio is probably pretty close to that. And so what I mean by conversion ratio would be overall submittals or services to fulfillment. So if I'm a recruiter and I have 100 submittals in a year, hopefully I have more than that unless I'm maybe an executive search. But even then, I probably want more than 100 submittals, but let's just use it as the example. If I have 100 submittals and my conversion ratio spits out at 40%, what that is that's the amount of my submittals that I actually placed, that we actually fulfilled for a client. And so that's important. And we've got really good at that and measuring that over the last 2 years. And in one of our businesses, our business that focuses on the packaging industry, to share a quick story on that, we were at about that. We've had these and we've been working, on them with our operators and just everyone on understanding these numbers and how to use them. That business, we had an equity partner leave that was running the company at the beginning of last year. I'm proud of how that went down because he's still one of my best friends. It was tough for us. It was not easy. It was sad, but it's a part of what we're building. It's going to be a part of the process. If we really want to go out and build, what we're setting out to do, that's just going to be a part of the process. So when he left, though, you can imagine that was tough on the business in the upcoming months. And the business was not on track to hit its marks for last year. And the person that stepped in, that was number, kind of 2 in charge there and stepped into the number 1 slot when that happened, one of my best friends. Respect the hell out of the guy. His name's Dom Crossan. He's only been in the industry for, 3.5 years, so a little bit less, since 2021, whatever that is now. And we actually interviewed him 4 or 5 times over my whole career. But he was outside the industry and we always wanted to hire him as a recruiter and he never wanted to start there. And that's how we solely hired, for a long time. And so it just never connected until it did when we didn't acquire, but we merged with a small packaging recruiting company in over 18 months in 2021 to mid 2022. We rolled in all our packaging service agreements to that new company. And so he was working for that company. And so that was, finally after 10, 11 years of recruiting him, we were working together. And, I'm not going to get all super spiritual or anything, but to me, I'm a person of faith and I think that was God, connecting us at the right time. That's just my opinion on that. But he was not really good with these conversion ratios. So our blended conversion ratio with our business units at Spark Talent, which is our biggest outfit, was over 40% last year. We were pretty happy with that. We do want to see it improve, and we have plenty of room to improve it, but we're pretty happy with that because if we were submitting people and there were a miss, we had enough situations where we could redeploy submittals and look at other spots for them where it wasn't a zero-sum game. And that's how we got that up into the mid-40s. Well, when we looked at this in, I think it was June, and they were not doing well, overall on their targets, they were at 7% on this number. This is the power, kind of one of the things I love about what we're doing is that this is a smaller outfit. It's a team of 5, and they're learning. Like I said, he's only been doing this at that time for less than 3 years. They weren't doing the process completely right is what we found throughout that. We had to work on our requirement qualification. We had to work on what we were focused on, and we had to just work on making sure that we weren't allocating over submit. We didn't need to submit 6 candidates at a time to a job. I get that we want to service the customer, but let's get some feedback, first before we do that. Those were the types of things that were driving their conversion ratio down. And we went to work at that with him. It's a testament to him as a leader and as a person. They flipped that. They didn't get it all the way to 40% last year, but they moved that in the back half of the year all the way into the mid-20s. And it turned into their best year in business ever. And they're surging, right now. I think they can get that into the 30s and 40s this year, but it starts with being aware of what your issues are. Got to know what your issues are. And so that's conversion ratios. Overall, we do a pretty good job. I gave you an example of where we weren't and where we've improved it. Let me give you another example of where our teams, and this is my failure, not our teams, it's my fault. Our fill ratios are not good. In fact, it's not that they're not good. It's that up until maybe the time this conference is done, we can't confirm that we agree with what they are. And I hear some laughs, so you probably know where I may be going with this. That's because up to this point, it's taken us all the way to almost 15 million in gross profit. And we will figure out how to get to 30 and beyond. But I think we're going to do it faster if we can get our fill ratios, because the bigger you get, the more scale you have to point your resources in the right direction. And you can't do that. Like it gets too hard to control that when you have remote teams and in-person teams and different styles and all this kind of stuff that we'll talk about in a few minutes. I got to be able to see what's going on with data. And so we were allowing jobs, you probably heard this before, not to go through the ATS or being put in at the last minute, or they would submit on stuff and not have it in and only put it in if they would get something. Now we could see that there was a submittal, but it wasn't hitting the way we run our fill ratio reports. And so it was a mess when we tried to look at this year. It was supposed to be done on January 1st. It's still not done today to my liking. So we are 35 days, 36 days in. I share that with you is because we don't hit on every one of our execution points. We have our own warts and things that we got to work on. This is one of them for us. We're pretty close. In fact, I got an email that said we're there, but I would like to review it before, you got to trust but verify. And so we're pretty darn close. But I think that's really going to help us to figure out where we are nailing it for clients and where we're maybe putting in resources that we're not allocating our recruiter time, or our recruiting time to the best of our abilities, or it might mean we need to get back in front of the client and qualify stuff better, have more conversations, make sure we know what's going on. Like when's the last time we were in front of that customer? We work nationally, and we do a lot of work on Teams and Zoom and all, and that's great. But I don't think anything replaces being in location, with the customer and learning about their business. And yes, both are, I'm not knocking either. We do both. But if we're seeing that we're having an issue with the client, we have some choices. We can work bad orders, we can disappear on the client, or we can roll up our sleeves and try and figure out how to provide solutions for them. Maybe sometimes we're not the solution for them, and that can be okay. But let's at least go through the process of figuring that out. So that is probably the number one thing at a scalable level that we're working on as a portfolio of companies, is just make sure that data is good. And once we confirm that we like the data, then we can really get into the coaching and development on it. It's still good to do the coaching and development, but if I'm using data that doesn't make sense, it's not going to be that effective. Okay. High level metrics. We use a report card to change our business. There's 14 different metrics on the report card that we view either every month or every quarter. I'm going to take questions at the end. And I'll share what some of these metrics are if people want to hear them. I would advise everyone, it's I do think a lot of these would work for most of our businesses, but what's most important is that you customize anything that you hear within this. Success leaves clues, but you may need to tweak things to make it work within your business or, for you. But so we look at 14 things, and some of them we look at quarterly, some we look at monthly. And then, yes, we look at it, obviously annually as well. And that's been a key thing for us. Kind of the bridge to that was having a gross profit strategy. And this is probably from a highest level. The report card was an evolution of the gross profit strategy and is now my number one tool on making decisions. But the evolution of that is it started with the gross profit strategy. And the evolution of the gross profit strategy was to understand what the gross profit actually was. And so once we understood what the gross profit was, and we looked at what happened to us, it's like, man, like our net income got cut in half. Like we grew the team and our net income got cut in half when our sales dropped. And well, why did that happen? Well, we were hiring aggressively. We're in a people business. Generally, we're going to hire aggressively. I think now more than ever, like I'm all in on working with people, but we need to be aware, of what's going on within technology and using the tools, at our resources. And honestly, that's the number one thing I'm hoping to take away from the event is learning more about what some other people are doing within the tools that they find effective and just kind of soak that in. Then I'm going to take it back to people that are smarter than me and let them test it out and all that kind of stuff. Because that's not my best skill set, but we have some people that they're good at that. But you have to know what this is. We tend to lean high on team member spend because we're people in a people business, and we love people, and we believe that people are solutions to complex problems, and that's good. But it can get overcooked on how much we hire internally. The other thing is your operational spend. And okay, as we're growing and you add people, I'm sure we've all had the experience where our team starts coming to us. If you have an open door policy, that's great. I do, except for when I'm focused in and then my door's shut. If I need it shut, I shut it. I try and keep it open. Well, what happens? People come in. When your business is growing, it's exciting. You're adding people. They have ideas. You want to acknowledge those ideas and you want to lean towards, or at least, I've read this in books, right? I want to lean towards saying yes, and I think that's good. There's good things about that. But if we say yes to everything or have no frameworks around it, you could easily see why, as we're growing revenue and adding people and then adding tools left and right and not measuring how those tools are used, not having any kind of frameworks for that stuff, how we could get kind of high on that spend. Oh, we also didn't look at our gross profit number at that point. We're just looking at our revenue and our bottom line. So then the second that revenue starts to go down and we have more people and more tools and long-term, 2-3 year contracts on tools or whatever, now we're in a situation where we're getting pressed on our margins. Not a great place to be. If you can sign 1-year contracts or month-to-month contracts, I'd do it. Even if it costs a little bit more money, I work it into our gross profit strategy. Why? Because it helps protect, against some of this stuff. Now, there are tools like LinkedIn. That's a big one for us. We look at LinkedIn, Microsoft owns it. Whatever happens with AI, we think we're keeping this tool. We'll do a longer term contract on something like that. But if we're testing something out, I don't care if I can get it for a couple $100 a month cheaper, if we sign up for a long-term deal, because I'm not sure if we're going to use it. And frankly, half the people, maybe even more, that are selling us these tools, they don't know either if it's going to work. So that's what I like to do. But having this strategy, so I'll go quickly on this because I'm probably going to spend too much time on it because I'm passionate about it. But this is different within our portfolio of businesses because you have to work towards what is optimized, right? I can't just spit out. If I'm trying to grow the business, I'm probably not going to be the most profitable, right out of the gate, or at least I can grow the business and stay at a profitability line. But if I'm starting it out or it happens organically, like some of our niche companies have happened organically, well, the margins really compressed or non-existent at the start because we have to build the team and pay them before that stuff starts to come through. It's more of a longer term play. Well, that compresses our margins down, but we've got a good feel for this on how we want to do that. And that's built into our growth plan. So I'll just share with you. And if there's more questions, I'll take more on this at the end, but within one of our mature businesses, let's use talent, for example. This year's a little bit different because we flipped some of our operational models, but for 3 years in a row, we tried to be at 45% on our team member investment within our gross profit